Lori Chavez-DeRemer handily won the Republican nomination for Oregon's newly redrawn 5th Congressional District. And now she knows who will she be running against, as Jamie McLeod-Skinner won an upset victory over longtime Congressman Kurt Schrader for the Democrats. Chavez-DeRemer is the former mayor of Happy Valley, a small business owner in the area of healthcare. Lori Chavez-DeRemer, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Oh, thank you, Ken, for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, you and Jamie McLeod-Skinner are polar opposites politically. The new 5th District, it's a mix of urban and rural on both sides of the Cascades. What do you see as your advantage in this race?
Well, definitely people, I think, are looking for balance and common sense. For sure, polar opposites, but the issues don't change. It's how we are going to approach the issues that I think will be a benefit. Certainly raising my kids through the education system here, being invested 22 years in Congressional District 5, developing a business over 18 years, serving the greater Portland area as far as Clackamas and all the way actually over to Bend where we have some offices. And then being on the ground as a mayor, elected for 8 years to serve the fastest growing city in Oregon, except for Bend now that's happening. But that hands-on approach to what are the citizens wanting? What do the voters look for? Where's the common sense approaches to a more vibrant community and a whole community? So I think with all those together, the voters will look to have my back and support me in the general election in November.
You won by enough that it didn't really play out in your race, but what did you think of the ballot counting issues in Clackamas County, and should there be changes before November?
Well, I think it raises the question, doesn't it, for a lot of us when there was questions about election integrity that we've heard throughout the nation from the 2020 race and so forth. But really, it's about audits, and these are important issues because people expect free and fair elections. It's unfortunate that this happened in Clackamas County. It looks like they're wrapping it up here in the next few weeks to certify that election. But I think a continuous approach to those audits and what our processes look like so people feel that their votes are counted and that they're secure and that they're meaningful. So certainly we need to keep an eye on it. And I think that they'll get it, straightened out. But it certainly raises more and more questions about mail-in ballots and do people's votes really matter? And I want them to matter because it's the most important thing that we have for the democratic process. So make sure to keep an eye on these things.
Public safety was your #1 issue even before the tragedies in Buffalo, New York and Uvalde, Texas. Do you support any national gun reform, like banning assault weapons or background checks?
Public safety is the #1 thing that I think any community looks for. Fully funding the police has always been something that I focused on as a mayor, making sure that they had the tools needed to enforce the laws that were already in place. The issue in Uvalde and has happened across our nation is, again, as a mom, a daughter who is a teacher, it's just unrecognizable what is happening on the streets of not only Texas, across the nation, but again in Portland as well. And Oregon has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation. Universal background checks, and we have to enforce the laws that we have. So again, this is a tragic event that's played out, and we're just now kind of getting the full picture. Parents are grieving. I know the funerals have begun, and I am praying for those families. I would imagine as any parent or anybody who recognizes what's gone on. So there will be a debate that the citizens of America want us to have. But I think it's going to address a lot of things, mental health crisis, the culture crisis that we're experiencing amongst our families. And so this is going to be a big debate, but I think it's time to let them get through this process and love them and support them through it before this full floor debate will happen in Congress.
What about the debate that's going on now, not only in the halls of Congress, but out on the street about banning assault weapons, background checks, going back to my original question?
Again, I think following the laws that are in place, which we don't do. I think several laws were broken in Texas. And again, what laws will stop the mental health crisis and the evil that can come from this criminality? Again, over the weekend, I think we saw in Portland that there were several shootings that have happened. And I think it's a culture crisis that we're experiencing, a culture war. And we need to make sure that we protect our children in our schools. And I think there's some frontline things that we can definitely do by securing the perimeter, making sure our kids are safe when they go to school, and making sure that we can pick our kids safely up at the end of the day and bring them home.
You've criticized what you call cancel culture and the so-called woke mob, but doesn't freedom of speech include the opinions of those you disagree with?
Of course, freedom of speech is exactly, it is an inalienable right, right? It is in the Constitution. I would protect it at all costs.
Also, you oppose critical race theory, which you say teaches children to hate each other based on the color of their skin. But are you conflating CRT with teaching lessons about the real history of race in our country, like, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, even in our region, the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II?
Civil rights should definitely be taught in our schools, right? What happened during the civil rights and how important that is to our nation. And we should always denounce any sort of racism. I am Hispanic. I think it's important to denounce any sort of racism. Critical race theory doesn't do that except further divide the children. They are just so the developable souls of these young people, and we're imposing critical race theory to further divide them. And I just don't think it's the way it needs to be. We need to get back to teaching reading, writing, and math. And we need to make sure that we can get kids home and teach them the values in our own home about this. So yeah, we need to get away from the CRT. That is not the goal. It is an academic influence that needs to get out of the classroom.
Well, if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, which it looks like they might do eventually, would you continue to support legal abortion in Oregon? And what would your stance on women from other states coming to Oregon to have an abortion?
What most people don't recognize that in Oregon, there are really no laws against any abortion up until the last day. Federally funded, no waiting periods, and all the way up until the 9th month. And I don't think that there's any American or any Oregonian who wants that. That, again, it doesn't make sense to us that there's not restrictions at all. Actually, 60% of Americans want some sort of restriction in the second trimester, 80% in the third trimester. I don't believe that in Oregon, if Roe is overturned, if that's the final opinion, that they will be outlawed in Oregon, but definitely need some restrictions.
Final question here. Right now, Democrats have a 12-member majority in Congress in the House. Can Republicans take back the House, and is your race important to that goal?
Well, I don't think you just make an assumption that it's going to flip, but I do think that the backdrop of the economy, the inflation, the crime on our streets, those things will bubble up, and that's why people are wanting to see change. With Oregon's 5th district being an even district, I think that they're going to weigh heavily. Whether Republicans stick with Republicans and Democrats stick with Democrats, there's definitely the non-affiliated and the independents who are going to weigh in on this race. But it's the issues that make it bubble up and want some more conservative values. And they want some change. And I think that that is what's going to sway this seat. And Republicans across the nation will pick up more seats because of the frustration of the Biden policies that have happened. I mean, with a 30% approval rating with this administration, people are wanting change, and they deserve that change.
Lori Chavez-DeRemer, thank you for joining me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks, Ken. Have a good day.
You too.